Hello and welcome to the Daily Roto Premium NBA Show. This is the Wednesday, March 24th edition. It is trade deadline eve. Andrew Barron here, Christopher Pacheco here. Pacheco, we got a lot of games. We got a lot of news. We got a lot of things that could go wrong, that have gone wrong. There's all kinds of stuff out there. How are you feeling? This is what we live for.
Yeah, certainly. It was a little bit overwhelming to finish the slate because there's just so many games and so many things that are happening out there. On top of the trade deadline stuff, we do have Giannis Q, James Harden Q, Brogdon, Miles Turner Q, and Terrence Ross Q as some of the bigger ones in this slate. Mm-hmm. So it's just if you're feeling overwhelmed, know that we share that feeling with you. But the good news is the projections have been finalized for the slate, and I'm feeling pretty good about where we're at least right now.
Yeah, I think so too. Apologies for the late start. We did have some issues. It was not Giannis or Harden or even Malcolm Brogdon that was throwing us off. It was the inimitable Alize Johnson, who had switched teams, and that didn't move the needle for us enough on the back end to have done it properly. So we had him. Whatever. That was the issue with the technical problem. But we're here. We're ready to go. We got some teams on the front end, some teams on the back end. But there's 11 games, so let's just get right into it. You mentioned James Harden. The Brooklyn Nets are on the back end of a back-to-back. They are in Utah. This is a late game, and there's almost a blowout spread here. Harden is questionable. Blake Griffin's not going to play, but it's also a national TV game, so he better be hurt for them to sit him. He will play unless he's actually hurt. So to me, that his ownership is projecting as super, super high, but I think people are going to be a little wary of this. I don't know that we're going to get news before lock. Might bring him down a little bit. And I mean, if you get Harden at an ownership discount, obviously just Jam. You got, what do you got? Talk to me about this game, please.
Well, certainly a concern with Harden. This is the second time that he's landed on the injury report with this neck issue. So to your point that he better be hurt, Andrew, it doesn't seem like they are lying about this one or trying to cover something up there that's not really going on. Had the same neck issue yesterday in Portland, was a game time decision, played. If anything, when I heard that he was a game time decision yesterday, it just feels like the thing is minor in nature. But the spread, to me, being 10 points, I mean, it kind of told me that Harden probably doesn't play tonight. That was my initial reaction here, with Brooklyn having a total near 110 and at Utah. Maybe they're trying to middle that as well, because I think Brooklyn's total is probably going to be even lower if Harden doesn't actually play.
Yeah, I don't think this has anything to – I mean, I think the spread is still with Harden in. It's just the Nets are down enough dudes, and they're such a train wreck defensively anyway, and then we're dealing with this brutal Utah spread pick and roll. They're just not going to be able to cover them. So I think, if the shots are – if Utah is hitting at 40% from three, which they do most of the time, I think 130 is in the cards for them. I think they're going to score a lot of points. It's tough with Utah. We've talked about this a lot, just because their rotation is so normal. It's so spread out the way the usage works, it's very egalitarian system. Everyone gets their shots. So they can score 130, 140 points and not have anyone really go nuclear. Gobert is, because he's a center, is the one that tends to the most. And then Donovan Mitchell, because he has the highest usage upside, would be the other one. But I don't know. Is there anyone you're interested in from Utah, or are you just kind of going with Harden and hoping that he plays?
I mean, Rudy it feels like he's in such a smash spot. Conley and his price tag on FanDuel is always such a it's tempting. It's certainly tempting, but the challenge that I have with Conley is that with everyone healthy, he doesn't really get there from an upside perspective, and he's at least not in a very meaningful way. He has scored 0% of his time is 50 FanDuel points this year. Granted, at 5,800, you also don't need 50, right?
No.
So if he 40s, you're actually doing pretty well. He's done 18% of his time, so at least somewhat reachable for him. And the other challenge with Conley is at these price tags, he gets ownership as well. So, it's a great spot for all these guys, Andrew, as you mentioned. 130 total here for Utah when it's all said and done is not out of the realm of possibilities. But the guys that I do like from a pricing perspective, like Conley on FanDuel, I think he's always really strong for cash. In tournaments, I'm kind of turned off. I think Rudy in tournaments works for me on both sites, frankly, but on DraftKings 8,400 is a little bit more appropriate. Don Mitchell, I'm fine paying that tax. Jordan Clarkson, 4,600 on FanDuel, I would do that as well. So to your point that it's, even with a big total, these guys still don't really get there in a massive way. It's a very fair point, but it doesn't mean that I'm just going to X these guys out in tournaments tonight, right?
Right. No, I think that's a good point. That does make a lot of sense. The issue you're going to run into, and like I'm saying, I find this to be overall a positive in that I think that this is going to make Harden's ownership pretty low. But if he's ruled out, like this is a 10 o'clock game, and so like your other studs, so Denver's in Toronto, so they're playing East Coast time. Dallas is an 8 o'clock game, and Milwaukee and Boston is the first nationally televised game. So like they're all your other three studs, Jokic, Embiid, Jokic, Giannis, and Luka will all have tipped a couple hours before this game goes off. So you're looking at like on FanDuel, you've got, you're going from Harden to Donovan Mitchell, basically. That's there's Atlanta and Sacramento too. So like Buddy Hield, it's really Tyrese Halliburton, but that's like such a big salary difference. So you might want to leave a couple options open. On DraftKings, it's, you've got Trae Young, Harden's at point guard there. You can, he's probably going to be in a util slot if you've got him there anyway, because it's such a late game. So there's some room to move around, but it's going to be difficult if he gets ruled out late. To me, it's worth the gamble because I think that it's going to be difficult enough that he doesn't get played. And if he does get played, he's an awesome play, So
okay, so let's talk about the ownership. That is key. That is, in my opinion, that is the key here with this play, because I do think that the projection being lower and significantly lower to that effect from yesterday's game. Yesterday, Harden was projecting for his 67 and a half. Tonight, he's projecting for 61 and a half on DraftKings and under 60 on FanDuel. Part of that is clearly the lower total here. They're at 110. And the minutes are slightly down. So, from 38 to like 37 and 3/4. So not that meaningful. But the total being that low, certainly going to drive the projection down. But Andrew, he's still showing up as a, one of the most owned plays, if not the most owned play on the slate. Do you think
the most owned on FanDuel? I do not. If we get news that he's like definitely playing, I think maybe it'll stay around there because he's got the best he's got the best projection, really high optimal percentage. Shooting guard is not like insanely loaded. There's some plays, but it's not crazy. And then, so I, he's a great play, but I do think that this questionable tag is going to make some people manually dock him, like a lot of people. So I think that this drives up Luka, Giannis, and Jokic a little bit, and that Harden comes in a little bit lower owned, but we'll see. And maybe we get news before all of this happens. We don't know. It's, the slate doesn't start for another 3 hours and 15 minutes, but that's a big decision to make tonight. That is really going to change the slate around. Speaking of those studs, the other national television game, Giannis is questionable tonight. They're playing against Boston, but oh my God, Boston, especially without Tristan Thompson, Boston can't do anything to Giannis. They've had trouble with him for years. Even with Al Horford, who is kind of the guy you create in a lab to defend someone like Giannis, because he's big enough to get in the way, but he also never fouls, which is really hard to do. And they've had trouble with him, even in the Horford days. And I don't know. Giannis has really wrecked the Celtics. So What do you got here? He's looking a little bit less owned. He's also questionable, but I don't know, man. Like, I think Giannis and Harden are the premier studs actually tonight, and they might end up less owned than Jokic and Luka. So, what do you got for me here?
I mean, essentially, all these guys are projecting as coin flips. No, on FanDuel, we got 56.5 for Giannis. Jokic is at 56. Harden's at 57.5. Luka's almost at 58. And you could make the argument for any of them, really, tonight. But
yeah,
Giannis against Boston, that just seems like just an absolute nut spot, just crazy spot. Feels like 70, 80 burger, very well within reach for him in this matchup if he ends up playing, which he practiced yesterday, so. It looks like the injury is not severe at all. I love the spot for Giannis, just like you do. If he ends up being the lowest owned of these guys, isn't this a no-brainer? It just seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yep. He's the most expensive on FanDuel, where that is more of a deal. It's 11.4, 11.3 for Harden, 11 flat for Luka, and Jokic all the way down to 10.8, but. I don't know. There's blowout risk in all of these games. Yeah, Giannis, if he's the lowest owned, sign me up. Harden may end up being the lowest owned because of this weird contextual factor that the algo doesn't know. But give me all the Giannis, dude. It's a great spot for him. And yes, he might be low owned.
I guess the thing is Boston has to make this competitive, right, for him to get that fourth quarter rotation, and they've just been such a disaster.
Right.
That it's hard to have faith, but it looks like Tatum will play tonight. He was ill the other night. It was a super late scratch, not on the injury report tonight. So, as long as he plays and Jalen's in there and Kemba, my assumption is they'll make it competitive into the fourth, and Milwaukee probably runs away in the end.
Right. Boston also has been linked to a ton of trade rumors. Marcus Smart would be the lot. Like he has to be the one to go should they make any significant deals, just because of how the salaries work. Like no one, like to get rid of Kemba's contract would cost you assets. So like teams aren't taking him on. Teams do like Marcus Smart, and even ones that like, if he goes to Orlando in an Aaron Gordon trade or something like that, like Marcus Smart isn't necessarily sticking around in Orlando, but teams want him. They can get something for him versus where Kemba is like a net negative contract, unfortunately. So like Smart would be the one that would move if they make anything big for a trade. So like there's some risk with that too, but I don't know. It's only a 6-point spread. It's a weird one, man. It's a weird one, but I am definitely into some Giannis and not as much into the Celtics just because they appear to be at full strength tonight. And hopefully that makes it a game.
Smart on FanDuel 5K stock upside. If he doesn't get traded, which
I wouldn't expect him to, but
Boston's always linked to trade rumors since I was born.
And other GMs don't trust Ainge. It's like the guy in your fantasy league that like always fleeces everyone and then just no one deals with him anymore. That's kind of what's happened to Danny Ainge at this point, because he just won so many trades forever and people are just understandably scared of him, I guess. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Okay, premier fantasy game, Memphis and OKC. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is not going to play. That is reflected in the opto. Sorry, that took a minute, but that's what's going on there. What do you got for me as far as news and notes for Memphis and OKC?
Well, I would like to see if Al Horford ends up playing. He's not on the injury report, so the belief has to be that. Yeah, like he should be playing in this one tonight. But he's also linked to trade rumors too, by the way. He's another guy that might get moved. I don't know how real that is, but that's a thing. They don't really, need him. They're trying to play Moses Brown more anyway. So thing with that is that Horford without Shai has put up, some nice rates in there. So I think he might get some ownership on DraftKings at 6,100. I don't know how I feel about that. Horford also played a lot of those games without, Ty Jerome and some of these guards that OKC has now, when Shea was out. So
Poku, no Poku.
no Poku. No Poku either, I guess. Like there were some things that were working in his favor pretty clearly when it came to his rates. And I think with SGA out, it's going to help, but I don't think he's going to have with SGA out this season, he's been at 30% assist rate. Like I don't think that holds. That type of stuff. Like I think that might be a little bit inflated. So I think his median projection is pretty much right on point. So I don't know. I'm not really loving OKC tonight. I think they're priced pretty appropriately. What if Moses Brown and Al Horford just play like 24 minutes each, type of thing, and maybe that would make Moses Brown somewhat interesting on FanDuel given his upside.
No, I think that makes sense. I mean, the problem with moving Al Horford for them is I think they were hoping that he would. I mean, he's a useful player. Like I think teams like him. He's a good
Sure.
solid player. Problem is, he's got 2 more years guaranteed at 27 per. So that's an ugly ass contract. And so the really good teams will be a lot of them. Like Milwaukee's at the hard cap. Like I don't even think they could take him on. And there's you're really into the tax if you do take him on. It really kills your flexibility for a couple of years. So I don't think teams are chomping at the bit to get Al Horford, and I don't think OKC is really interested in giving up assets to get rid of him, which is kind of where they're at, So we'll see. My guess would be that he does not get moved either, and I don't know. I think you mentioned him getting ownership on DraftKings. I do think he makes more sense there. I wouldn't waste the spot on him at center on FanDuel just because he's a little bit, we've talked about this a bit. He's more of like a cash guy where it's like the range of outcomes is a little lighter. He's going to be pretty good, but he doesn't have access to the 60, which like a ton of centers do, like just every night. There's a ton of them that can do that. So I don't think Al Horford's really going to put up more than 45 in anything but the most extreme circumstances, but it's a nice game overall. I think Jonas Valanciunas can put up more than 45. This is a really nice choice spot for him. I think he could really get going. Ja Morant's also on the other side of the ball. I think this is a pretty solid place for him to kind of run around and do his thing. His usage has been up a bit. The minutes are pretty secure. The Sims think of him as a pretty high variance player still. He hasn't been as much lately, but it's in there. I think the 50 spot is very real with him, and I think it will happen. And he's not priced up at that sort of tier 1. He's kind of almost like in a tier 3. He's what is he, 7,500 on FanDuel, I believe.
Yeah, 74.
Yeah. So I mean, that's like down in Norm Powell, Chris Paul, Kristaps Porzingis, Middleton range. I think his ceiling's higher than most of those guys.
I couldn't agree more. I still like me some Ja, even though he hasn't gone there in that way that you're mentioning. But I still like him, and I still think that is in there as you mentioned. It's pretty obvious, but certain things have to click. I mean, so many things have to go right for the 50-60 burger to be a thing. But I still think he has that sort of upside in him for sure. You mentioned the Joel spot for him tonight. I do like that call again. Kyle Anderson's I'm probably just out anytime I see Kyle Anderson double digits on FanDuel. I understand it, but there is just more risk to his projection than you might think, given that Memphis plays 10 guys every night. And if Winslow has it going or something, Anderson's just dust. Like he's just going to be coffined. So that one scares me, certainly. And on the OKC side, by the way, I did want to mention Maladon and Dort on FanDuel. I think they're kind of interesting over there at their ownership. And Maladon on DraftKings, I think, is a little bit interesting, but catching some ownership and not a favorite to be pretty optimal here. He's at 2.9%. So I don't know. I think he's all right, but if he's going to catch like 10% ownership, I'm out.
Yeah, that's tough. Dort, It's pretty decent for him. I mean, with no SGA, like he really does kind of tend to run the offense every once in a while.
Things. Yeah.
Yeah, 4,900. He's obviously got some steals upside. Not as much as you'd think, because like the on-ball guys aren't really the ones who get the crazy turnovers as much. It's more the Robert Covingtons that are more help defenders that have your block and steal upside. But I mean, he's certainly had a few where it's rare what he's able to do, which is just like directly pick the pocket of the guy he's guarding. Like that doesn't happen a ton. And Ja will make some passes that are not necessarily impossible. Sure. And so I think he could get in the way of a few of those. So yeah, Dort, 4,900 small forward on FanDuel. Small forward, by the way, just a note I had, it's a disaster on DraftKings. Kawhi Leonard has the highest optimal percentage. It's like 6.5%. It's brutal. So there are not a ton of plays there tonight. You're going to be trying to scrape out value. Justice Winslow is in that conversation, actually, because he's so cheap. And, maybe does he steal minutes away from Kyle Anderson? I think he's a reasonable play. He's actually been a little more consistent than you would have thought lately, where it's like, okay, yeah, he's just getting 20 to 22 minutes all the time, but he does close a fair amount. I don't know. I feel like there's a 27-minute ceiling in there somewhere, but it hasn't really happened. So approach with caution. But this is a really nice game. I think you can play a lot of pieces from it and potentially profit. Another game that is not really as nice, Denver. They're on the back end of a back-to-back. They are in Toronto, who is another team with some real scary trade possibilities. I mean, who knows? Like it's weird because like the trades often come out of nowhere, but the Lowry and Powell are definitely big names. They have been mentioned quite a bit. So possibility of them getting traded, does that scare you at all? Or are you just firing away if you're going to play them?
No, Yes, I'm definitely scared of that because it seems like a real possibility. I think Toronto's lost almost 10 games in a row, by the way. Remember when they won that heater?
Yep.
They came back down to earth, all right. So I don't know. It seems like the Lowry thing definitely has caught a lot of chatter. And Powell now he's 7,500 on FanDuel. Which is just kind of insane, but he has had a nice little run for sure. And then Lowry on DraftKings is 8,100. Like, frankly, I'm just not playing that. On DraftKings, I'm not playing that. So, regardless of whether he's traded or not tonight, like, I'm just not playing that. Too many games, not big enough of a ceiling with everyone healthy. I'm not into it. 77 on FanDuel is a little bit more interesting, but again, if it's a trade candidate, Andrew, it's 11 games. Why? Like, why? Just why are you doing that?
Right, and they're getting healthier, and they've been missing a lot of guys. So, like, these dudes are all pretty fully priced. It's not what you want. And Toronto's been really bad. The last 2 weeks, they have a minus 11.9 net rating. They are nestled in between Cleveland at 28th and Houston at 30th for like they're 29th in net rating in the last 2 weeks. That's real bad. If you can stomach it, Pascal Siakam is pretty nice leverage. He's going to be like very, very low owned. He's feuding with Nick Nurse. He's gotten in like trouble and like straight benched a couple times lately, which is also not what you want. But wow, he's low owned.
Yeah, I like that. I mean,
yeah.
I like that one way more than Lowry, for sure. His ownership looks like he's going to be around 2% or something. I mean, I actually believe that because it's not that he's done much lately anyway, So
no, there's contextual factors that like add into that. Like in sites in general, like all the industry has taken a minute or two away from him here and there because he's lost some lately, but it's because he was just like straight up fighting and got benched. Like it's not. Yeah. Like if he's back to normal, his minutes projection should be a couple minutes higher.
I mean, I'd play it on 7,300 on DraftKings. I am in. For those that are playing on DraftKings tonight, like I really do like that price tag. Again, just not going to be on over there either. It is essentially the same conversation on FanDuel for Siakam as it is on DraftKings. really like him tonight. I think Van Vliet is the other one at 7,900 that you could take some shots. The big thing, Andrew, is you believe this game's competitive. If you do, these dudes can play 40 minutes. What we've seen, I mean, Van Vliet lives there. He lives in 40s. So I think he's in play on both sites.
Yeah, I mean, Denver traveled and is on the second night of a back-to-back. So that's that's why the spread is not very far. There's definitely a ton of blowout risk here, though, because if Denver's got it going, it could get ugly fast. But, I mean, FEV and Siakam are not going anywhere. And if, Norm or Lowry sort of last minute gets scratched because no one, because something has been agreed to that they didn't report before, it's a non-injury situation, then all of a sudden it's whoa, now we've got all these rates for him too. Yeah, FEV and Siakam, I think, are the ones that you can play on that. On Denver, Jokic remains a phenomenal play as usual. Monte Morris is still out. Jamal Murray, pretty high variance. He's been a little better lately, but he's obviously got 60 in him every once in a great while. He's one of those kind of dudes to go after in tournaments. When he's low owned, he's going to be low owned. What do you got for me on Denver?
Well, second night of back-to-back, as you mentioned. The main thing that I wanted to see was a little bit less ownership on the Joker. But on DraftKings, that is the case. I think maybe you can – I don't know about 10%, but maybe 12 to 15. He probably lives in that range. I still
like brutally tight on DraftKings tonight.
I know.
It may not still be by the time news breaks, but of right now, it's really hard to spend up there. So that's why these guys all the studs are pretty low owned.
Yeah, I like it. Can you find a stud and a better contextual factor tonight? Of course. Harden and Jokic coming, playing second night in a row here is not necessarily great especially when you get Giannis potentially coming back, and this would be his first game here, and you also have Luka kind of rested, so yeah, you can find studs in better spots, but it seems like on FanDuel, Joker is going to be meaningfully lower owned than some of the other guys, Andrew. So he's kind of falling on the Giannis ownership on FanDuel. So I'm interested. Again, outside of that, Jamal Murray, 7,300 on DraftKings, has my attention a little bit. Michael Porter Jr., still think he's a play on FanDuel at 6,500. Same with Will Barton. Paul Millsap, 4K. I think he might have to get played on DraftKings, Andrew, if we don't get news, because he's 4K. Yep. I don't love it, but at 4K, if he just gets you 30, you love it. But I don't know. He's a dog for that. Right,
and if Siakam's flailing around out there, that's a guy that Millsap will block a fair amount. Actually, that's that's a dude that's played that kind of shot is what Millsap gets up to deal with still. So. Yeah, it's not the most insane play. He's had some, he's had some games in the 30s, and if there is real need for salary relief, then he's reasonable. But it's a bonkers game. It's weird.
Yeah, and there are a lot of games on this one, man. That's the thing. But the thing I don't like to do is just X out stuff. No, but in such a big slate, I think people will, just because there's so many darn games.
Agreed. What's up, Noel? What's up, Call? Thanks for watching, guys. We have Dallas and Minnesota, the fourth stud of the evening in Luka. And I mean, Cat is priced up there too. Those two kind of make some sense to play together, hoping this game stays close. Yeah. Towns has had a bit more of just getting the ball at the top of the key and kind of going to work lately, which is not generally his game, but he's getting those opportunities. I think he's got the big games in him. It's much harder to do on DraftKings because they're both over 10K and there's no savings there yet. But this is also a potentially good fantasy game. So what do you got for me here?
Towns and Edwards, feel free to disagree with me, please. Towns and Edwards are really the only ones with a really meaningful ceiling on the Minnesota side. Like I'm talking 50 plus.
How dare you talk about a McDaniels brother like that?
No. I don't know about that one. Rubio can get you 40. He can get you 40 on a good night. 50. I mean, has he done it? I'm going to double check this. Has he done it once this year? No.
We did poo-poo him, and I think I might have referred to him as fancy Michael Carter Williams, and then he promptly dropped like 48 that night. Which is
yeah. That was pretty good. He's also 6,400 on DraftKings, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not playing that. There's no shot I'm playing Ricky Rubio at 6,400. No matter what you tell me I can't do it. I just can't do that. So on DraftKings, honestly, Andrew, this is a pretty easy conversation on DraftKings. It's Towns, it's Edwards on the Minnesota side, and there's no one else I could seriously recommend to you on that side. Too many guys vulturing at each other too. Vanderbilt, McDaniels. Like I just wish McDaniels won that battle like just outright. Then he could get like 28 minutes a night, and we could recommend him. But I can't do that. We also might get Jordan McLaughlin back tonight for Minnesota. So just too many dudes, and the ones that are really affected are Edwards and Towns. So that's it for me. Really, it's a short list for me on Minnesota. Unless you got some other thoughts.
No, that makes sense. And I think there's other. Listen, McDaniels and Vanderbilt are like free now. They're down to 3,500, and I was going to talk about Claxton or like the Bobby Portis. I mean, Portis we've discussed is not really one of those dudes anymore because of him not getting like the crazy blowout run. He's also 5K tonight. Claxton is also 5K, but at power forward on FanDuel, that's like a decent one where it's like in your. You're not playing Harden. You've got some of him. You're hoping the game blows out. I think that's one of the like if Claxton, then no Harden, Gobert, Mitchell, Joe Harris, etc. Make sure you're not playing other like key pieces in that. But he's a guy who puts up a lot of points in a hurry and can kind of go nuts in a blowout, and will get the blowout run. So, and he's without Blake Griffin tonight, he's even short of a little more playing time. So like he'll be in the rotation. Even though he was with Blake, but I think his minutes are somewhat secure. He's safe for 18, but the 26-28, which is where he can score 35 points, is doable if like Utah just blows him out. So worth talking about. But yeah, I think you're right on Minnesota. It's really just Edwards and Cat, and Edwards he's put up a lot of real points in several games. He stinks, but he's put up a lot of real points.
I can't do Vandy on DraftKings. On FanDuel, though, cycle play, just hoping that like he's having a really good game, which honestly doesn't even guarantee him the 26-28. But we've seen it. We've seen like the games in the 20s when he's doing good stuff. 3,500 power forward eligible, I guess.
Spend the extra $100 and go for McDaniels, though, dude. Like Vandy's like not even in the rotation, basically.
But he started last game. I mean, what do you mean?
He played like 7 minutes 2 games ago and 4 the game before that. It's really gross.
It's horrific.
And McDaniels comes in off the bench. Like, listen, the problem with both of these guys is they just have no usage. So like they have to get it done through weird stuff. They'll get a couple, like they have like PJ Tucker usage where it's like they can have a chance to hit a corner 3. But if those aren't dropping, they're screwed. They need it like in putbacks. They need it in blocks. Like they're just these long, rangy guys that run around and do cool stuff, but usually not much of it. So, but like they both put up games over 35 this year, I believe. So, it's in the range of outcomes. But yeah, I like, Luka, obviously. Kristaps is always a pretty nice play. This is more on FanDuel where you can afford to play multiple dudes here. Like, Luka with Cat is certainly a viable sort of mini game stack. You can play Luka and Kristaps together. They tend to like play pretty well at the same time. Dallas has a huge total. I think it might be the highest on the slate. So if this game stays close, it's going to go way over that most likely. Okay, here. Let's see. Charlotte, Houston.
By the way, on DraftKings, you can the way the slate is setting up right now. things could just be so much different later. But right now, realistically, you should only play one stud, right? I'm seeing lineups with two, but you get JaVale in there. You get Malik Monk, which I don't think it's the worst play. But you also get some Dorian Smith. You can get some Jeff Green on. Right now the vanilla optimals are spitting out a lot of two studs, like Luka and Harden specifically. Seems like really popular pairing over there. It's going to be with some shaky value. It's going to be with some pretty darn shaky value. So that's certainly something to monitor. I would feel better about just playing one, going a little bit more balanced. I think that's where I'm at right now, and hoping that wins me out. Because JaVale, some of these guys, Andrew, could just score like 10 to 12 drafting points. No BS.
Oh, yeah.
They could very well land in that range. So I think.
No, my best lineup on Monday had Jaden McDaniels, and it was really unfortunate. This is like, oh wow, this is a really nice lineup. It's all coming together, and then I've got this 0.7% owned piece in here, and then he scored like 11 fantasy points. It's a little bit tough here. Okay, what do we got? Charlotte and Houston. Speaking of Malik Monk, that was a tough one actually because we both expressed quite a bit of interest in him on Monday.
Yeah.
He ended up playing a lot, but unfortunately didn't do enough. And it was like that was your 1% game for him, or 2%, whatever he was. And now he's looking at mid-teens. Gross. Because he's so cheap and he played a lot and everyone's projecting him for 25 minutes now. Here's the problem with how this goes, right? Is like now that he's chalk, it's like, okay, now he's going to shoot well, which he just didn't when he got a lot of minutes on Monday. It's like he ruined some really good lineups too. And it's like, all right, now like at 15%, like I don't want any of that. And of course, tonight he's going to go 6 for 9 from 3 because that's just how it works.
Because that's just how it works, huh? Well, I was kind of looking forward to maybe getting in some Devontae Graham. I mean, the thing about Graham last game is that the rates weren't really as good as I was hoping they'd be.
Right. And
neither were the minutes, if we want to be fair here. We were projecting like 32. He didn't really even get there. So
full disclosure, the last week and a half have not been able to watch as much basketball. I'm in baseball preparation hell right now. I have a lot of projects that have to get done in the next 9 days. That was partially why Davis filled in for me yesterday. I also got my first shot, which was pretty cool. But this is a lot of baseball stuff happening for me. So I have not been watching quite as much basketball. I'm getting the impression that it was basically Hayward running point guard and not Devontae Graham. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That is exactly what occurred in that game. We got a lot of point Gordon. And so I was actually thinking about recommending him on DraftKings some. The price tag isn't great at $7,900, but the baselines here that you're seeing on the rates, I think they have some leeway there in terms of being wrong. We could be totally wrong about his assist rate moving forward. It might be upper 20s here because Devontae Graham wasn't really playing that role. And that was one of the things that we mentioned last show, Andrew, in terms of the one difference this year for Charlotte that they didn't have last year. Of course, LaMelo is one of them. Gordon is the other. And so it's certainly impacting things. And I think he's a pretty nice play tonight at the ownership that I'm seeing. You mentioned DraftKings is horrific at small forward. Gordon, one, is pretty safe for his 30, 40 fantasy output. But I think now 50s is definitely a very real thing for him.
No, I think that you're right. And agreed on DraftKings. He's going to be pretty darn popular on FanDuel because of his only $7,000 price tag. And, he's got the 50 in him. It's a little Jeremy Grant-esque, where it's like, I don't really want to play him at 25% owned, but because I don't know that we've talked about him a lot as being a nice tournament play this year because he's often $7,600 when he should be $7K. And so his ownership is really low and he's got the he's got the 50 ceiling. I don't know that he's got the 60. But there's all, small forward in general is a pretty weak position. So like you're gonna want some on FanDuel, but he's owned more than he probably should be.
I mean, if you look, if you just break down the small forward position on FanDuel or DraftKings, Kawhi, Tatum, Brown, Hayward, right? Those are the top four. Middleton to round out the top five with DeRozan in there. So they're essentially like a coin flip of Middleton and DeRozan. The challenge with a lot of these guys is they run into the very same issue, Andrew. The range of outcomes it's not great for tournaments, right? Could Kawhi get you 55? Yeah. Tatum could run into a 55-ish, once in a little bit. Brown 50 is probably where he really tops out, frankly, with everyone healthy. And then Hayward. And Hayward is cheaper than those guys. Yeah. And so I think, for me, that's what makes him such a good cash game play. And also, I think in tournaments, he's in a very similar range as the other guys, and he's the cheapest guy. So, I mean, Middleton's 8K and DeRozan's 8,400 too. So he literally is the cheapest of all of those guys. So I really do like him tonight on that site.
Yeah, he's a good play. Also, am I stupid to think that John Wall might be a good play? He's very low owned. He is putting up shots. Like Kevin Porter Jr. might not play. It's scary. Like if all four of those dudes, we talked about this, like this offense does not make sense together if we've got Wall, Oladipo, Wood, and KPJ all out there. That's just kind of gross because they're all dudes that like create offense with the ball in their hands. They're not, Wall's obviously the best passer of those guys, but they're not a huge skill for anybody but Wall. But I don't know. He's like a little overpriced. He's very low owned. And I don't know. Is it too big of a slate to try to do that because he probably doesn't have access to like 60?
Dude, he almost did the 60 thing the other night when I really didn't like him. Second out of a back-to-back too. I think he triple-doubled in that game, which, I mean, for rebounds, that's kind of nuts because he doesn't do the rebounding thing a lot. But no, I don't think you're crazy for that. Like his ownership. I like his ownership. And he's not doing the 50 thing very often, but what are your thoughts on him 50 and tonight? Is this a matchup for that? Like, I know with LaMelo, I think Charlotte's not going to play as fast potentially with LaMelo not in there. Mm-hmm. But is that something that concerns you matchup wise? Like, what are your thoughts there? If you have any?
Not really. I mean, Charlotte's got that Bucks-ish defense where they like kind of try to crowd the paint, which isn't great for Wall necessarily, but they allow the most wide open threes in the league. So that's, I mean, Wall can hit some. It's just we'll see how this goes. We'll see how this goes. But it's going to be an interesting evening. But I don't think the matchup is particularly concerning one way or the other. And Wall, especially, FanDuel is 8K. Okay. Like that's not exorbitantly priced, and I think he's got 50 access. So at 3% owned, I'm willing to take a few stabs there, which I have not really been with John Wall thus far this season.
He's 7,600 on DraftKings too, so he's close to Ja and some of the other point guards that you mentioned earlier. Really similar
plays, actually. I feel pretty similarly about Ja and Wall tonight. I think similar kind of range of outcomes, similar price tags, similar like a little bit too low owned. So,
and Oladipo on the trade block too, by the way. So we'll see if tonight is the night that he gets moved, but. Seems like Houston.
I don't think they're getting their whole their demand of quality young player plus good first round pick for him. It seems unlikely to happen, but yeah, they'll probably get once they come down to earth on their asking price, they'll probably get someone to take a stab on him. He's not very good. You hate to see it. He was really good for a little while. It's almost like a D'Angelo Russell-esque fall here, where it's like, okay, the guy was really good for a season or 50 games or whatever. And, Oladipo, obviously, he had a lot of injury problems, but it's been a long time since he's been back from that, and he just cannot shoot or create good offense. So, and he's not the defender. He had a huge reputation coming out of college as like a guy who could shoot threes and play really good defense. Turns out he can't do either of those, but he was just like this unbelievable slasher for 1 year. Anyway, moving on to his former team, the Indiana Pacers, who play against the Detroit Pistons this evening. Talk to me about this game.
Oh, okay.
Turner and Brogdon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Brogdon and Turner are questionable officially. They both missed Indiana's last game, which today is Wednesday. They last played on Monday. They missed that one. And Edmund Sumner started. We thought it was going to be McConnell, but they play LeVert at point guard. I think that's the big thing here, Andrew, that like LeVert gets unlocked a little bit more. His rates were a little bit better without Brogdon in there, and then TJ not starting. So that is something for him that I think is meaningful. And then for Turner, Doug McDermott was the one that started, and then Sabonis slides the center. So that one was pretty obvious, and that's what happened. The other one that happened was Jeremy Lamb got unlocked a little bit, and he's pretty cheap around the industry. My one fear is I wonder if Brogdon does get ruled out, if he just gets ownership because people are chasing that game now. But it's probably too deep of a slate for people to dive that deep, would be my guess. We have to get these news before lock because this is a 7:00 game. Andy's pretty good about their news and when they deliver them. So I'm feeling pretty confident that we get it. If all these guys play, you're not going to play Lamb. Sumner's just not even in consideration anyway. But if he were to start at 3K on DraftKings, people are going to look at that a little bit. If these guys are all healthy, Andrew, seems like on FanDuel is where you have access to the better price tags. On DraftKings, Sabonis is 94, Brogdon is 72, and Turner's 5,600. It's not that I hate those price tags, but they're pretty damn fair.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think so too. There's some room for upside here. I think there's guys. There's definitely guys in play, but. What about on the Detroit side of the ball? We've got, Jeremy Grant has the kind of silly price tag at that 7K, but with other plays out there, he's a power forward now. So he is not getting like insane ownership, especially on FanDuel, because you've got Giannis, you've got Sabonis, you've got Tatum, you've got Kristaps, who's going to be pretty popular. Aaron Gordon's playing big minutes lately. PJ Washington's good value. So Jeremy Grant is certainly going to go under the radar. I worry about him like blowing through all of these guys ceiling wise, and I kind of think I like Siakam at the $900 more for power forward. But I also might just not like Jeremy Grant.
No, I think what you don't like about Jeremy Grant is that one, he has been chalk for forever on FanDuel, and then two, we don't see a big ceiling out of Grant. Like most of the time, he just falls in the 40s, and that's it. And if you look at Jeremy Grant on DraftKings this year, he's done 41% of the time, 10% of the time. On FanDuel, Andrew, he's actually done 58% of the time, and 63% of the time. So he actually got into the 60s a couple times there. But that sort of ceiling is just not. It's just not a thing for Jeremy Grant. He doesn't.
And I think that was early when he was really showing off, like, oh, look at me, what I can do now. And he's kind of chilled out back to old Jeremy Grant a bit.
In terms of like the rebounding and assist rate and stuff, like they all chilled out. And so now,
because he's got a real point. He's got a real point guard on his team now. They brought in Dennis Smith Jr. So
it's actually it's still on right, but
whatever, dude. Killjoy.
It's DeLon Wright, the professional in the room, DeLon Wright. So I'd rather do Siakam. Like I want to take my in tournaments, right? In tournaments, I'd rather take my chances on wider, just higher variance guys. I think Siakam is one of those right now. I really do believe that. Grant isn't. Grant is probably going to do the 35 thing and tap out, 35-40 and tap out.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, it's fine. Let's pick it up because I do have a hard out in like 20 minutes. The big boss has got a project too in baseball, and we got this. Phoenix and Orlando are both on the back end of a back-to-back. This is kind of an ugly game, man. Talk to me about it.
Can I not?
Sure. You want to skip it?
Do I have an out? No.
I mean, let's go quick. CP3 and Booker didn't play much last night in the first game of that back-to-back. They beat Miami handily. They beat Miami pretty handily. So, you know, they're fresh. Orlando's got a bunch of dudes that Mike traded too.
Yeah.
Those are the talking points there.
And DeAndre is 5,800 on DraftKings. Me and Davis liked them yesterday, and he did his thing at 5,800. Orlando has Vooch. You know, I think that is probably good for Aiden, like just having him out there instead of Sarge. I think Sarge could get bullied in this one. So could Aiden, honestly. But 5,800 is a good tag for him on DraftKings. Outside of that, Booker and Paul are not a thing for me on DraftKings. Not a thing. Not doing it tonight. Booker and Paul on FanDuel. I'm probably not doing the Paul thing in tournaments. Booker 7,800. I would do it. I would do some of that. These guys are falling into the same thing in terms of the range of outcomes, Andrew. Just ceiling wise, it's 40 and tapping out.
No, I think that's right. And you got like, you know, it's like Booker is he going to beat? He's got to pretty significantly beat like Halliburton at 2K less. And, you know, Mitchell's got the really nice matchup with the bad Brooklyn defense. I think, you know, Zach LaVine's got more of a ceiling than Booker kind of, and they're the same price now. LaVine's price tag has come down significantly. If that game stays close, Cleveland really stinks. You know, Paul George against San Antonio. That's about it. Yeah, I don't really love a lot of plays in this game. So let's move on. Aaron Gordon, I think, is in play for tournaments just because his minutes have been back up quite a bit, and you know the price tag's pretty decent. So speaking of Zach LaVine, they get to play Cleveland tonight. All I am seeing for news is that Garrett Temple might be back. Anything else you got?
No. In terms of Q guys, no. That's the one. So if Temple plays, he probably gets in the rotation over Arcidiacono. If Temple doesn't play, it's the other way around. This doesn't feel like a great Zach slate for me. You're probably going to disagree. But I don't think it's a great one for him. On FanDuel, he's AK. Yes, I'm in. On DraftKings, 8,500. I don't know. I still have some difficulties there. But are you seriously considering anyone else on the Chicago side? Probably not. I'm not. On the Cleveland side, it's a very similar story too, Andrew. Like McGee is popping into optimals on DraftKings, and people were wondering on our Slack chat, like, what are we projecting him to start or something? And we're not. No, he's at 60 minutes. It's just because he's such a high per minute producer that at just like 20 DraftKings points, he starts to get in there.
The optimizer is starving for DraftKings value right now, so be wary of that. Like, and you know, JaVale's fun, but like he's almost like a McDaniels guy, where it's like, okay, this could, there's an 11-point downside here.
Absolutely. Jared Allen, I'm not doing Jared Allen at 7,600 on DraftKings. I am also probably not doing Colin Sexton at 7,400. I'm probably not doing that.
No, not unless a ton of value frees up. I'm with you as far as the DraftKings goes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough because like Cleveland turns the ball over the most in the league. Like that's enticing. You'd think maybe somebody can eke out value, but Chicago's had a pretty muddled rotation lately. It's really just LaVine that has like super secure minutes, and then or guys like Sato. He plays his 27, 28, 29, but it's like he doesn't do much. So it's really tough. It's really tough. Exactly, Paul. You nailed it. Paul says there's not much deep value on DK yet. Just trying to jam two studs, so that's why you're getting McGee. I couldn't agree more. So be careful about that. I would not be playing 20%.
Like loads of them. Yeah, like loads of them.
It's worth some stabs because like he is a guy that can also put up 30 in 16 minutes. We talk about these guys all the time because he's one of those dudes that's like, he got 2 blocks, a putback, and a steal in 3 minutes, and just all of a sudden he's paid off his value. So he's reasonable. The Clippers and Spurs are playing it on back-to-back nights here. That's Yappin, by the way, Paul. Great. Mm-hmm. Hey, Yappin. The Clippers and Spurs are on the first night of doubleheader. They're going to play the exact same game tomorrow. Well, I mean, not the exact. the same matchup.
Same matchup
tomorrow. First in 2 games. What do you got for me as far as news and notes go here?
No Ibaka for the Clippers. Again, also no Pat Beverly. So those are the guys that are officially out on the Clippers side. On the San Antonio side, we don't have Rudy Gay, and we also don't have Lonnie Walker. So we might be able to talk about some Spurs finally.
Yeah.
Keldon, yes. I'm trying to look at his DraftKings tag. It is 5,900. Goodness gracious, that's a lot. That's a lot. 6,400 on FanDuel is a lot too.
That Keldon ceiling though is nuts. Like, I mean, if he's really having a good Keldon game, he's blowing past needing the 6K thing. It's just it's ugly because he's live to put up 20, but if he puts up 20, that doesn't help you if he's 4,900 and you're more comfortable with the price tag. You know what I mean? It's like if Keldon has a good game, that price tag is not going to really matter.
Sure, yeah, for his ceiling, like yes, you're right. Unless he was like 8K or something, then
it's pretty binary. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty binary with him. Like he's either stinks or puts up 4. He's got like the 4 games now with over 45.
Yeah, no, I get it. And those injuries, I certainly think it can help the playing time because Keldon and Derek White are 2 dudes that can play 35 instead of what we're projecting. Keldon actually played close to 40 the other night. So the minute ceiling now gets a little bit looser, right, without those guys in there. And that's why I think it's such a nice thing. Like, as an example, we're projecting like Trey Lyles minutes, Trey Jones minutes. What if San Antonio just goes all out to win this game tonight and then just punts tomorrow and those guys don't play? That's probably going to guys like Keldon, Derek White, DeJounte, and DeRozan. So I'm kind of into some Spurs here more than usual.
They're 22 and 18. They're in the playoffs. Like they're ahead of Dallas.
They're there. They're there. The challenge on DraftKings is the price tags feel a little bit out of reach for me. On FanDuel, I'm reaching them. On DraftKings, DeJounte is a guy at 7,400. I would consider tonight. But then what? Derek White 5,800. I guess. Keldon at 5,900. Sure. But outside of that, I don't know. Are you doing DeRozan 8,400 on DraftKings tonight, Andrew? Like, would you do that at small forward? No. I don't know that I would either. I don't know
because they're going to, like the Clippers specifically are in trouble for him because they're just going to switch everything and he's going to get, okay, cool. I switched from Paul George to Kawhi. Let's do it again. Oh, I switched from Kawhi to Marcus Morris. Like, I'm in trouble. He doesn't have like, it's going to be hard for him to get switches that he feels like he can take advantage of. Yeah. And so he's not like a runner. I think it's a better spot for Keldon because if he beats the switch, he's got a wide open run to the cup. Like that's what switching does is it's trying to stop the initial drive, but because you're like not letting a guy get a second of daylight to like wiggle his way free. But if you're switching like that, the help's got to come once the guy gets through it. Like and Keldon gets all his work done at the basket and he's real quick. So I think he, with some of those drives could really I think it's a better game. It's better for Keldon's offense against the Clippers than it is for DeMar DeRozan's, in my opinion.
I think of these guys very similarly tonight, DeJounte, John Morant, and John Wall. You got to play one on DraftKings. I think the answer is probably Ja. I'm thinking the answer is probably Ja, but I think of those guys very similarly tonight. And actually, from a projection standpoint, they're almost right there within one another. Because DeJounte has DeMar, right? And maybe that's causing like a mental block for me of like that's going to be harder for him to put the 50 plus. It doesn't mean he can't get played. I just like Ja a little bit more than those guys.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Zubac is really cheap on FanDuel again. I said it on Monday, like I'm comfortable going 0% Zubac. Like I don't think his range of outcome, his usage is just so low. With 22 starting centers tonight, somebody's putting up 60, and Zubac is not likely to beat 40. So even at 5K, it's like he puts up 32. I'd be shocked for that to be a tournament winner.
I have some quick thoughts here on the Clippers. Not on Kawhi and Paul George. They're fine. They're completely fine tonight.
Very
Zubac's
expensive, yeah. Or Kawhi is,
Yeah.
PG not so much, yeah.
Zubac didn't close last game in a competitive game. Here's the thing. So, right, a little bit of context. The Clippers actually benched their entire starting lineup in the middle of the third quarter. And then Terrence Mann and Luke Kennard, who's typically not in the rotation with all these guys, but Kennard shot like 7 from 7 for 3 or something. Like that unit actually got them back in the game, Andrew. And then Zubac just didn't see a single minute moving forward. And so we saw the same thing from Zubac last year in terms of when it got to the fourth quarter, he didn't get a single minute because they were comfortable riding small lineups. That risk is back here again tonight against the Spurs. They don't have to play him in the fourth. So
I think it's more likely that they do here. Like, I mean, the Capella Trae Young pick and roll, like the centers can't play that defensively. But like Jakob Poeltl is not really doing that to you as much. So I think he can play more here. But
I mean, same. I'm not projecting 24. I'm projecting 28. So I am expecting at least some fourth quarter run. But I'm saying there's a lot of sites are going to project 31 plus with confidence because that's what we saw a couple games ago. There's no way you can project this with confidence. He might not close in certain matchups.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I do think this is one that he could, but I'm with you. It's more of like I'm okay with him as the last piece in cash, but I don't want him in tournaments. I just don't think the range of outcomes is wide enough. And you need to embrace that really wide range of outcomes for centers because they're the tournament winners. Like you're gonna just look at the FanDuel winning lineups. Like there's almost always a center that scored like 60 on them because usually a center does that. Okay, last game is the Atlanta Hawks. They're in Sacramento.
Yeah,
pretty salubrious fantasy game. Yeah, let's talk about it.
I like it. I certainly like it. 3-point spread, lots of points projected to be scored here. It's like 231-ish total, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes over that. Gallinari is Q for the Hawks, but they also have DeAndre Hunter back. He was already playing like 20 minutes last game, and so he's going to play more and more here as he gets his legs underneath him. So certainly some risk for someone like Gallinari or some of the other wings. Certainly at risk here, but Trey, Clint, those are the guys on FanDuel that you're seriously considering. On the Atlanta side. On DraftKings, it's honestly a very similar conversation, Andrew. It's Capella, it's Young. Everyone else is a pretty darn big negative value. John Collins is just mispriced. Yeah. He's just mispriced. And so that's a really challenging one. I wish he was a little bit cheaper so I could recommend him, but he's not. So really tough on the Atlanta side because there's only a couple guys really we're considering on this slate.
Yeah, and Trae Young has a nice price tag. He's pretty good leverage, but Sacramento's defense is not as bad as you think it is, and it's definitely not as bad at the 3-point stuff. Like they go after the 3-point line. I think it's much more of like someone's gonna take advantage of them. It's more like Capella really could get a lot done here. I think they're gonna really struggle with that. But Atlanta, the Sacramento does not allow a ton of wide open threes or threes in general. Like they really contest that pretty well. They've had pretty poor shooting luck against them. Like teams are shooting like 40% against them, despite them having like the third highest contest rate in the league. Like they're contesting these shots and they're going in. Like that's luck. And that's a little bit of like, they're in the same division. I think, I don't remember what divisions are, but like, like they play a lot of Golden State and, a lot of Steph and Dame. Like that's a little tough that's going to drive up your opponent shooting percentage from 3 a fair amount. But
true.
Yeah. So it's not the matchup you think it is for Trae Young, I guess I would say. But he's also not going to be that owned. So like I'm definitely fine taking some stabs on him. I think Capella is certainly in play. And then on the other side of the ball, are you worried about Sacramento against the red hot Atlanta Hawks?
No. No, I'm not. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that for a second. And neither is Vegas here apparently. Fox, Rashawn on FanDuel. I mean, he has the 60s are in there. The 60s are in there, Andrew. He does it. He does it. On DraftKings, it's a little bit tougher because the stocks aren't worth as much. FanDuel, Rashawn is a thing, and really low owned again tonight, and going to have to battle it out with a lot of Jokic, Towns, you name it. It's a lot of center. It's deep tonight. So Rashawn's not going to get much ownership in this one. Also doesn't have much of an optimal percentage over there either. But I'm into some of that. I'm into some of Fox for sure. Halliburton, 5,700 on FanDuel. That is going to get played. That has to get played on really on both sides. He's 57 on DraftKings. That's a nice little mid-tier play. His ceiling isn't ginormous, but in the fives, I mean, if he gives you 40, you're dancing. You're dancing.
Yep.
So,
nearly did the other night at 2% owned. That was a nice one.
Yeah, he's not going to be 2% owned this time around.
No, he's going to be quite popular tonight because everyone gave him an extra 3 minutes. I don't know why that didn't happen earlier because he was playing that. Like he and Bagley competed directly for minutes. They're like the Kings are a much better team. Like they're a good team now without Bagley. That starting five or the five with Halliburton is like they have a really good net rating. They just have an atrocious bench.
Barnes is another guy like on FanDuel. It's fine. He's small forward 6K. It's fine. But on DraftKings, actually 6,500. It's not great, but it's another guy in your small forward pool because of how bad small forwards are on DraftKings tonight. Like he doesn't have access to 50 often at all, but he should be in your pool. And then the other one, Andrew, Buddy Hield, I would do that too in tournaments. I would do that. Hassan Whiteside, if you're playing JaVale McGee, why should you not play Whiteside then? I know he's a little bit more expensive on DraftKings, but say in the weirdest scenario, we actually don't get more value on this slate, you should be playing some Whiteside. It's a very similar thing. And when Whiteside goes nuts, he goes nuts. So 4,100 DraftKings, I'm not opposed to that. It probably hurts Rashawn if he's playing a lot, but I would do that.
Right. I think that's right. Okay, that's the games. In peroration, we got a good strategy question here, which is from Yappin about talking through roster construction. We got a lot of subs that won tickets into that big Millie contest tonight. Yep. So let's do this. Someone take that down. As far as like how to build a roster, it's kind of hard to tell right now because something's going to change that's going to probably change how that works. But as of right now, do you have I think my biggest thing would be kind of to just leave yourself some options. Like the Harden news is huge, and that's going to happen late, and it's going to happen after lock, and it's going to happen late enough that if a lot of value opens up, or just if the roster construction changes post 7 p.m., a lot of teams in that contest are already going to have kind of screwed themselves because they'll have a bunch of players that locked, and you can leave yourself some options. It could backfire for sure. If it doesn't happen until half an hour before, and then you've only got 2 games and you got to deal with putting 5 new players in, that's difficult, but that's kind of how I would tend to do it. I think that's the potential biggest edge. What about you?
Okay. All right. So should you chance then Harden, let's just say, let's build without Harden. Let's just say Harden doesn't play tonight, or that's the way you're trying to build in this slate, because it would release some value that we certainly don't have on the cheaper side, right? We know that Bruce Brown's going to have to play a lot. We also know that Tyler Johnson is going to have to play a lot of minutes, as well, and he's 3,600 on DraftKings.
It's going to be hard for him to not put up 30 fantasy points if Harden doesn't play, and at 3,600, that's a tournament winner on DraftKings for sure.
You're talking Tyler Johnson?
Yeah.
Tyler Johnson. So would you play them together? Would you just play the Brooklyn value together, Bruce Brown, Tyler Johnson? Give me all the minutes.
I think you could, just because Tyler Johnson's more of an on-ball creator and Bruce Brown's more of a cutter. So they're going to have to find each other a little bit for Brown to pay off. Brown doesn't do a ton of his own stuff. But I mean, I don't know how much of that, he's not shown a ton of that in the past. Obviously, that is exacerbated by the fact that he plays with James Harden and Kyrie Irving, so he never gets to create his own shot now. But
right.
I do think it'll be more Tyler that is holding the ball, and Brown will hopefully get some cuts.
So okay, because my answer was going to be yes. I would play them together if Harden is out. There's just so many guards on this roster. They are two of them. Chiosa's the other. Joe Harris could certainly play some guard minutes as well if needed at shooting guard. But Tyler Johnson and Bruce Brown are going to have to play a lot. You play them together. The way that this slate is shaping up, Andrew, is everyone's going to want to play two studs, right? It's what our optimal's spitting out, and it's also what a lot of optimals are going to spit out. Simply because the studs are at like 60 fantasy points tonight, so it's going to try to jam in some guys in the 20s like JaVale McGee or whatever, because it started for that sort of value. But if you just build with Tyler Johnson and Bruce Brown in mind, and then you go the other way, right, and play like Giannis and, just play different studs instead of what the Opto's really spitting out, which is going to be a lot of James Harden. I think that already is pretty damn different in the slate. It's a massive risk. It could absolutely backfire on you. No doubt about it. The other thing about the Brooklyn thing tonight, though, is there's some blowout risk here whether Harden plays or not. If he plays, I still think there's going to be some blowout risk. I think that this is one of those situations like the Philly game earlier in the season where everyone was really upset because Harden was smashing and he didn't get fourth quarter run because the game was like 15 points. Like the margin was like 15 points. Mm-hmm. And that could be a thing for Brooklyn tonight because they're on the second night of a back-to-back. So you might still just luck out with playing Tyler Johnson and Bruce Brown.
Yeah, so I think the nice thing about this with it being, because like specifically with this tournament, that's a $2,500 entry. Like I'm guessing not a ton of you have like 10 entries to it. And even with 10, it's like manageable. So if you've got one entry, you can build your two different lineups. Build one with Harden in where you like Harden and want to play him, or not, like whatever. Mm-hmm. Build one that just assumes Harden in, and build one without him. And you can change that around and make sure you can really, with only one or two lineups, like you can really go through and be like, well, if this, then this, and this, then that. Like you can really, really plan out what you want to happen. And that, I think, is probably the best way to gain an edge in that thing tonight, is to like allow yourself some wiggle room to make decisions later when other people can't because they'll have too many guys that have locked. But really play through it and like know what you're going to do, whether or not Harden plays.
I think right now my favorite, because we don't know anything right now at this moment, my favorite route had actually been building through one stud. So like Luka or Giannis or, someone that is thinking Harden plays and he gets all the ownership, like our Opto is kind of thinking about it right now on DraftKings, which you said that might not be the case, right, Andrew?
I bet he's lower owned. I bet people are scared, especially in that contest. But
so we'll see. I think my favorite route right now is like building through one stud and then paying a little bit more small forward, which I had mentioned. I really like Gordon Hayward, or, someone like that. That is actually my main way of building right now, instead of having to play two guys in the 10, 11K range and then just kind of killing your roster, because you're now rostering guys that have a 10-point sort of downside on them. Right. So that's my favorite way of building right now on DraftKings. Obviously, it's subject to change with everything that could happen tonight.
Sounds good, man. All right. Well, that was another show in the books. Hope everyone has a good time tonight. Yeah, like that's dope. Forgot so many people had tickets to that. Like, let's take that down. I would. You'd love to see it. You really would. So that'll do it for today's show. We're gonna get Davis is covering for me again tomorrow, and we'll be back with you on Friday. Pacheco, you're always here. We love it. Thanks for being you. Good talking to you, man. Good luck in all of your contests this evening, and we will talk to you soon.